oh, the way we used to do it, blah, 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 blah. It's like, yeah, just because you did it that way doesn't mean you should continue doing it that way. You put up with it, but you shouldn't have. And we need to start flipping a lot of these conversations on their head.
Welcome back to Educator University. Teaching can be tough, but when your environment is toxic, it can be even tougher. Today, our guest is Dr. Stockner, the author of Employment Ethics, which redefines the employee and employer relationship to create a more healthy dynamic. He holds a PhD in career and technical educational leadership and brings real-life experience from the military, public office, and teaching. We're going to learn how to spot toxic work environments and practice steps to reclaim your power in the teacher workplace. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, so good to have you. I think the first question, we just want to dive right in there and talk about what are some big red flags a teacher might be seeing that they might be in a toxic workplace?
Well, in my book, what I really cover is the relationship, right? And it argues that for that relationship to be successful, just like any relationship, like with me and my wife, I have some needs that she strives to meet, and then she has some needs that I strive to meet, right? That would be a balanced relationship, that both sides are meeting these needs. In the work of employment in general, we always hear about work ethic, and everybody has an image of it. The four things I outline is productivity, reliability, autonomy, and collaboration. Those are the basic elements of work ethic, right? So the flip side, if all employers know and demand that to meet their needs, and they say that those are their needs, what can we say is our needs as employees, so that way the employer can strive to meet them? I define that's where the employment ethics comes in, and it sets that basic bar of these are the four components of employment ethics: a safe and secure workspace, a responsible impact on the surrounding environment, that way you're not poisoning your potential workforce, a community supporting wage, and my favorite is an accountable professional relationship. We don't need to be friends. We don't need to be family. I want to be you're paying me to do a job, and I'm going to do the job. So that's that professional relationship. In the world of teaching, you typically don't have to worry about like a safe and secure workspace unless you're talking like trades, or you're talking some of the classes might have something dangerous within them. Now also the community supporting wage can be a thing. But that accountable professional relationship, that is where most of the abuse comes in. Is we're not treated at the minimum as professional. And how are we not being treated as professionals? And then the other part to it is the common abuses of commitment. But that's the key, is identifying I am a professional, you are a professional. Like, yeah. that understand, it's not even respect. It's I need to be treated as a professional, and I'm treating you as that too.
And this may be new information for some teachers listening. I know it took me many years to learn this, because as a teacher, sometimes you think, where does my workload end? Because you care so much. And so I think this is such an important conversation for us to start to be having with teachers.
Yes. That is giving permission to demand that professional relationship is something that a lot of teachers think. From my experience, as a lot of teachers, as you go down the grades, they don't allot themselves that professional mentality, because I am teaching at a university versus I'm teaching pre-K, right? So it's not just the teachers not giving themselves that line that they're going to draw. Like, I am a professional. The management is also not giving them that. School boards are not giving them that minimal level of professionalism.
Yes, and I have seen that, unfortunately, so many times. And so that's why this conversation is going to be so vital. And I think a question that you mentioned in your book is that you say ethical responsibility is often unfairly placed on workers. So like you said, it's also the responsibility, it sounds like, of the management to make these decisions. Can you talk a little more about that in terms of what you've learned?
When it comes to that balanced relationship, the balance comes with meeting each other's needs and accountability. The employer has accountability over the employee in making sure that the employee is meeting all of their needs. If you don't do your job, if you're not productive, we don't need you. But the catch is that accountability, especially in the United States where like union rate is so low, that accountability is not a two-way street. So we often have to go to outside entities to hold employers accountable. And that's where things, especially when we're talking K through 12, understanding that the school board is the outside entity that's supposed to be holding management accountable. School boards aren't supposed to hold teachers accountable. They're supposed to be holding management accountable. They're that vital component that holds the employment relationship together. And then the people hold the school board accountable. So it's supposed to be a circle, but the problem is it's often a straight line down.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. This is my first time hearing that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the argument I make is a lot in the world of employment in general. It's supposed to be government holds the employer accountable, and if you look at what I've labeled as employment ethics, each one of those, a safe and secure workspace, that's OSHA, an accountable professional relationship, that's EEOC, responsible impact surrounding environment, EPA, community supporting wage, that's LDW, the Labor and Wages Division. Like each one of these is meant to hold the employer accountable because oftentimes individual employees don't have the power to hold the employer accountable. And especially, like I said, in the United States where our union rates are so low, employers are able to take advantage of that by making each individual employee fight the entire employer.
Yes. I think that's so interesting that the board is supposed to be supporting the teachers because I don't know if I've ever really heard that. In my brain, I always thought it was board, superintendent, admin, and then teachers, but actually it's a little bit more of a checks and balances if it's working properly according to the ethics of the workplace. So we kind of know kind of how the system should work, but let's say it's not working for a teacher. If a teacher is thinking their school is maybe a little toxic, what are some first steps they could take realistically and safely to maybe move forward?
The first step immediately is a documentation. Like, that's always going to be the first step. Make sure you document everything. But outside of that, communication. None of us teachers are on an island unless we make it ourselves. We think we can push the rock up the hill by ourselves, and we really can't. We also need to be willing to start drawing lines in the sand. It has become very common that workload in general has been increasing across the board, and employers typically are shocked when they fire someone or someone leaves and then they find out, oh, we got to hire 3 people to replace this one. And it's
Mhm.
because we've allowed that workload to build up over time. We've developed our system. We develop systems with experience. What happens is we develop systems that make our job easier, and our experience allows us to do all these things. But then because we've made our jobs easier, oftentimes feel it's okay to add more to our workload. And then now we have to figure out how to streamline this additional process that wasn't our responsibility when we were hired, has nothing to do with what we were hired for. And then, okay, now I've streamlined this process to make it so I can maximize my time with family and friends and everything else. But now I have more responsibility because my employer says they need me to do it, mostly because they don't want to hire someone to do it. And now I'm a cost-saving measure for the employer. But that experience should be making it so that our lives become easier, that we are able to line up these systems to make it so we can do our job more efficiently. And recognizing that oftentimes we're punished for that efficiency can be a problem.
Yes. So, like you mentioned, keeping documentation if you're a teacher now who's thinking it might be toxic, keeping documentation of things and making sure that you're connecting also with your community because there's probably people who are experiencing similar things or who could lend support and get you kind of a better kind of frame of mind of what's happening.
The other part with toxic environments is um, we tend to, as a society, we tend to underplay the toxic part of the environment. We really talk down. Oh, it's not really that bad. Or we often hear the story that drives me up a wall. Oh, the way we used to do it, blah 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 blah. It's like, yeah, okay, but that doesn't, just because you did it that way doesn't mean you should continue doing it that way. Just because you put up with it doesn't mean you should have put up with it. That tends to be the catch, is people tend to spin it like, just because you put up with it, I should put up with it. It's like, no, you put up with it, but you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
And we need to start flipping a lot of these conversations on their head when we have the.
There was a very public platform of that happening. I don't know if you're familiar with the Dallas, I think the Texas cheerleaders. Are you familiar with that Netflix show?
Yep.
Did you see how like they were getting paid nothing and they
Mm-hmm.
kind of fought for it and everyone was like, well, I felt like the people above were like, well, you've always had it this way. And they're like, but it's not a living wage. So I kind of feel like that was a public platform of that idea.
Yep.
Yeah.
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 It's a change of mentality that a lot of old school mentality was what we're butting up against right now. And we really, especially nowadays, really need to keep pushing hard against it, because a lot of permissions were given that shouldn't have been given.
Yeah, and this kind of ties back into leadership in terms of what that looks like, big scale, and then also bringing it down to our kind of schools. You mentioned in your book that leadership is often romanticized. What does that mean, and how does that allow toxic cultures to survive?
It comes from the romanticization of leadership, comes from a study that came out in the 80s about how people have a tendency to overgive credit, and how it can disrupt, or how it can influence and create biases within management, or not within management, but within the study of management. For like an example would be like giving Steve Jobs all the credits for creating an iPhone, when you hear the stories of what Steve Jobs, how he was like to work for, and you're like, no, he was not. He didn't do any. He knew what he wanted, but he didn't do any of the design himself. He just knew what he wanted, but he was also kind of a monster to work for. He was notorious for throwing coffee cups at people. Like, he is not a leader that we should be idolizing. But because of the romanticization of leadership, we look over a lot of the stories, gloss over how he treated his employees and his designers and stuff, because he was successful. Even when you can even see it in our day-to-day discussion, we don't talk about management or supervisors. We talk about the leadership at our school. How is the no? Those are managers and supervisors. They're not leadership. How leadership is defined is very, and followership is defined, is very romantic. The leader tells you to do a thing, and the follower does the thing. So there, over time, we've created a system of looking at management and giving them more credit than they deserve. So what I try to highlight is, or the hill that I've decided to constantly be pushing my rock on, is leader is a role that is actually earned and given by your peers. Leaders arise in times of crisis, conflict, or change. Outside, if you're not in a period of crisis, conflict, or change, you're not practicing leadership. You're practicing either management or supervision. And those are each of those. Management is you're managing resources, you're resource orientated. Supervision is your task orientated. But we're managing the day-to-day operations of whatever system we're in.
Such an important distinction. I never thought about it like that.
Yeah, but that tends to be where the management loves to call themselves leaders, because when they call themselves management, that's boring.
Yeah.
Supervise, so that's where that romantic, we've allowed the discussion, like we're giving people the term leader, and we're allowing that to happen without them earning our trust. And trust is vitally important in leadership. That trust needs to be a true two-way street. And when you don't have trust, you really don't have leadership. So you have management, you have supervision. Again, this is a transactional relationship. I want a professional relationship. So I'm trying to do my job. You're ensuring that I'm doing my job. This person here is ensuring I have the resources to do my job. None of us are practicing leadership. We're all like, am an employee. My employer is the manager. My supervisor, they might be the same person, but my supervisor is ensuring I'm getting my tasks done. And the manager is making sure I have the resources to do my task. So
Yeah.
that we've overinflated, and we've allowed the management and supervision to overinflate their value by saying that they are leaders.
By overinflating their value, then it creates more toxicity in the work environment.
It allows them to cover up for bad management and bad supervision, because when we talk about leadership, because leadership is purely a people skill. You can't lead a, a widget to be made. You have to manage that you have the parts to be made. Well, when we focus on the leadership side, we can instill guilt. You don't want to embarrass the leadership. I'm your leader. You don't really want to let me down. And it's a way to build guilt into that relationship between management and the frontline workers.
Oh, I see. So that's why, and then it creates more toxicity in terms of not creating distinct roles and understanding that. So that makes a lot
Yep.
of sense. Yeah.
Yeah. It allows it blurs lines that shouldn't be blurred in a professional world.
That's a great kind of, those are great descriptors and vocabulary for us to be including when we're thinking about the people that are managing or supervising us and helping us to understand their role in kind of the school systems as well.
Hmm.
So I guess I'm kind of curious if a teacher is thinking, okay, maybe this situation is a little toxic and they don't have a leadership title or supervisor manager title. Are there ways that they can reclaim their own agency, their own way of doing things in a way that is effective for them?
This is where that leadership title really becomes important. We all have our own like personal definition of what a leader is, and if we're new to an environment, we should be asking ourselves. We shouldn't be asking ourselves who in management is the leader. It's who amongst my peers is a leader. Who's the person I trust to really support me? And it's not a question. Again, it's not a question of friendship. Sometimes I've especially when you're in the military, I know plenty of people that I do not consider friends, but I know if I needed someone, they have my back.
Yes.
That's the important distinction of a leader. Like, I don't know you personally, but you have respect of everyone around you. And as when you walk in the room, or when this person says a thing, everyone listens, right? That's identifying who those leaders are, and then being willing. Oftentimes it's being willing to approach that person. This tends to be actually a really big problem for new hires. But when people start highlighting like that, this person here, like, if you have a problem, they might be gruff, but they'll help you out. Like, that reputation that person gets, that's where you identify the leader amongst your peers. And just discussing with them and getting them to really help you out. Like, it usually, from my experience, usually it's the people that are like, they'll complain about it, but they're working something behind the scenes. So it tends to be that identifying that where that can be, and then getting your help when you need it from either those people or just from your own friend or peer group. Sometimes if you feel like you're alone and everybody's talking to you about their problems, that tells you that you're the leader.
Yeah.
That's the way everyone's looking at you to lead. Some people don't really understand when that's happening to them, but if people are coming to you with their problems, and you start questioning, like, why is everybody coming to me? And you're looking around trying to find some help, but wait, everybody's pointing at me. Okay, I might be the problem solver here and not know it. So that then it becomes, where's your trusted advisor? Who does the leader go to for help?
That really changes the way we think about leadership. It's not always the more traditional person who has been chosen for that task, but it's more the organic way of who is the person that people go to when there are problems and issues or they have something they want to talk about.
And that formal title can float. If it's a formal title, it tends to come with question. When it's an informal title, it can float around because not every problem's the same. So maybe you're looking for someone to help you with a more teaching side. And so you're looking towards the people with well-established programs and how they were able to get things done. Okay, that's a leader for this. Okay, maybe I'm looking for to solve this problem. I have a problem with a student or a few students that are really having problems. Well, that established person is a leader for this, but this person over here is a leader for this problem. So maybe I'll get and just giving each other that recognition, like I am coming to you because you were able to do this. You are a leader in this way. I see you, and just spreading that understanding around really it really helps lighten the load on putting it all on one person. But the other part to it is that it helps boost each other's confidence in those like okay, like I can help you out a little bit in this and that. Just that common recognition from your peers is really nice.
Yes, and I always tell teachers on my channel, talk to people when you're building because they'll be flattered that you asked. I talk to teachers who are brand new and they're scared to ask people for advice or help. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. People who have been there for a while, they want to help you. They want to support you, especially if you take their advice and you really use it.
Yeah, we all want then teachers want to see everyone around them succeed.
Yeah.
Like this has been one of those like there's a few jobs I've had where that wasn't the case, but in this environment, we want to see us all succeed because our projects are so long term. We're going to see this student every day for a few years. So we're going to see that person develop, and this if I pass off a bad student, I want maybe my class wasn't their class for them. So maybe it wasn't that they're a bad student, it's just my topic wasn't the one for them. And now oh look, they're exploding in this class and it's looking great for them. So we want to see all of our students succeed, and we want to see the teachers around us succeed as well.
Yes, that is such a strong part of what we do as teachers. And kind of moving into that idea of commitment and calling, there is kind of a line sometimes, though, when we have things like the word calling attached to teaching. And are there any dangers when teachers kind of start to see that only through that lens of calling and instead of the professional agreement that it is that you've seen in your experience?
Well, that's where another part where I cover in the book. We call it commitment. That's what when researchers look into like why you stay for a company, they're not actually looking into why you stay. The research looks into why don't you leave. That's how they identify commitment. Why don't you leave? So I reframe it as burdens. These are why you don't leave. The top three that they highlight is need, ought, and want. Okay? You need to stay due to the golden handcuffs. You're making enough money where what you look at is okay, I want to get a new job. I don't like my job. I'm going to get a new job. Well, not only am I going to take a pay cut, but do I have to move? What is the cost of living in the area that I'm moving to? Is there housing available to where I'm moving to? Like you start taking all of these things into consideration, and if the number in your head doesn't match up, well, now you're staying. So you have the golden handcuffs on you. You have the burden of need, right? With teaching, that tends to be the number one reason why people don't or people leave, especially younger teachers leave, is because those handcuffs weren't able to be put on them properly. It's a really low, unfortunately, for the education level required in most states. It's actually a very low wage job due to the student loans and stuff like that you need to take out. So that need undermines the other areas of commitment because they're not locked in place. But the ought is you feel guilty because you're leaving your friends and your peers. Those personal relationships you build up when you start telling yourself, "Oh, I stood up for this person here, and now if I leave, that makes this I'm abandoning this person amongst my peers." That one's one that really starts affecting once you've been established teacher for a while. That's the one that tends to keep you there the most or the second most. And it's just, you just don't want to leave your friends, right? The third one, and I think the one that really affects teachers the most, is pride. It's the want to stay. And not only do I have a successful program, look at all the people that have gone through my program and what they've gone on to, like how the grades have been going. I am really proud of the way the school's turned around, and I've really implemented this stuff here and that stuff there. We build a lot of pride in our work, and with teachers, it's that also includes the calling to, and not just teachers, but like nursing and everything else, service in general. That calling to your specific service, that is where the want comes in. And it's really hard. That's the hardest one to leave, because usually that want is ingrained in you. You really want to stay. You've done all of these things to build success around you. And if I leave, who's going to teach the students next year? It's going to take them forever to find someone to replace me. Especially now that there's a teacher shortage. I can't leave my students. Like, these are internal monologues that we have that convince us to stay in the toxic environments. And that's why I call them the burdens. And with teaching, that want to stay because you like to teach, and that's the one where they can get the most abuse out of you, because they're going to take advantage of it, and you'll take the low wages because you're doing your calling. You'll take a second job and a third job because I'm doing what I wanted to do when I was young. That's a hard one to overcome, but it's an easy one for most employers to abuse, especially over time, because the influences in toxic environments and teaching, from my experience, most toxic environments in the private sector are relatively quick. They add up tasks and everything else pretty quickly, but also like management moves around a lot more. So it's really hard to really get into that toxic stuff unless it's like top down really bad. In the government sector, especially in teaching though, we're talking like it's just builds up over time, and I'm not going to feel they implemented all of this stuff, but I got a summer to like recharge. But now my summers are getting shorter because of all the extra stuff that I have to do too. And I'm just taking a little bit of homework, a little bit of work home out of the school hours to get it done. But I'm making sure I'm delivering a quality education to my students, while at the same time more and more stuff is getting in the way of making those decisions that affect my classroom. So
Yeah, those are such real conversations that I know as teachers we're always having in our mind of what is that balance. And you mentioned a little bit in your book about, if I have it correctly, like transactional relationships when it comes to the employee-employer relationship. Could you talk a little bit more about what that looks like, and maybe for a teacher, how that's helpful to understand that piece?
that is the core of employment ethics. Is before we talk about want and before we talk about ought, what is the basic relationship between employee and employer? And it's across the board. When I did my study I did a wage study for Wisconsin, and it was under the understanding that what is the floor, right? Where it was establishing a floor of what is acceptable practices between employee and employer, and what is the floor for a wage. And instead of building a model around like, well educated or had this level, my floor was, this is a high school dropout that had a criminal record, that was an orphan, and all they could give you was their back, right? They were willing to, they want to turn their life around, they're going to work. That person should be able to afford a roof over their head, food on the table, transportation to and from work, right? And so that's where the community supporting wage came in, was establishing this is the minimum wage that someone should be able to make in order to maintain a basic lifestyle. And if they get that, they're able to deliver a high level of productivity. And that's that productivity to wage, that's the through line in the transactional relationship of employment. I then use like in the book I use Maslow's hierarchy of needs in order to highlight where the different, like where work ethic really aligns and where the employment ethics really align. Productivity is the fundamental need for all employers. Like service industry, if you're any manufacturer, if you have an employee, you need that employee to be productive in order to justify their wage and in order to lighten the load on you so you can do more. However, that wage shouldn't be at the detriment to the community around that employer. So somebody should be able to make a wage that allows them to be a productive member of society, and then I can give you the productivity you need. And then it goes like, okay, we established that a 40-hour work week is societally a full-time job, right? So if I dedicate 8 hours to you, 40 hours a week to you, I should be able to get forward, roof over my head, food on the table, transportation to and from work, and then after my 40 hours, that is me time. I can, if I want overtime, I can work overtime, but I should be able to hang out with my friends. I should be able to run for school board or like something like that. I should be able to participate in my community. And that's a lot of frustration I have with discussion around wages. A lot of the discussion doesn't manage time. Time is the resource that all employees are giving up. Wages is the resource that employers is giving up. And when you have that imbalance where you have an employer that doesn't care about the employee's time, your wages are going to go off.
Yeah.
And so it makes it harder for employees to really participate in their communities. And it makes it so that employers can depend more on entities that they shouldn't depend on. My favorite argument that I get into with people is when they talk about wages in general is, so you believe that Walmart should be closed during school hours? Like if you're saying it's a starting wage and only teens work there, okay, it should be closed during school hours, and in Wisconsin it should be closed after 10 o'clock because that's when teenagers are anybody under the age of 16, I think 16 or 18, isn't allowed to work past 10 o'clock. So if you say that it should be open, that means that the people that are working there are adults.
Yes, the logic doesn't
Since they're
lie.
adults,
Yeah.
that consideration needs to be taken. So, yeah.
Yes, and I think in teaching too, there's this idea of the workload, and just sometimes there's not always understanding of how much work it takes to get things done, and that teachers should just absorb things and be grateful that they have a job, sort of. And so, what do you say to someone who says that that people should just be grateful they have a job? What do you say to that kind of framework of thinking?
It has become a common frame. It's becoming more and more of a common framework nowadays. The catch with being grateful that you have a job, when the job is being frowned upon by society as a good chunk of it, is looking down on teachers. Like there's a reason why we have a teacher shortage across the country. There's a reason why we have a nursing shortage across the country. It, number one, has to do with the wages don't justify the education level required. We should be making more money in general, but people, what's the polite way to put this? People don't understand that the number one way that an employer shows respect is through their wage first, not through pizza parties. So, and that's where my study for having that, where I was talking about setting a floor and having someone without an education, all those components, right? Well, that gives us a floor. All right, now we have a floor for how much it costs to live in an area. Food on the table, transportation to and from work, and roof over our head, right? Well, according to modern budgeting practices, our student loads are also a need because that's about our financial health. 50-30-20 rule is 50% of your take-home pay should go to your needs, 30% of your budget should go to your wants, 20% of your budget should go to savings. and it considers all loans. All loans are part of your needs. So if you're going to demand that I have a bachelor's degree, that means that since we have an established floor on the K through 12 education system, or this person didn't go to school, right? Now, what are the average student loans for a bachelor's degree? Okay, that is added into that basic formula. And now we know how much I should be taking home. And then you require a master's degree, well, the average loan payment on that should be added into my income. And once all my loans are paid off, that money you're paying for my education, because you as an employer demanded that I have this level of education. So you don't get it for free. And
Yeah.
I think that valuing of education has gone by the wayside. And you see it in a lot of areas. One area that's commonly overlooked is secretaries. Like, they used to have secretaries, and then they got rid of secretaries when computers came along and made the secretary's job easier. Well, we can get rid of the secretary and now make because it's such an easy job, we can put it on management to do this, or our supervisors to do this. Well, now their supervisor's stuck being nearly a full-time secretary, answering emails and participating in meetings instead of actually supervising tasks and making sure that things are done properly and scheduling. Like, we've allowed the devaluing of many jobs, and that allowed the devaluing of the education to get those jobs.
Yeah, such an important component when you're thinking about pay is that certain jobs require, like teaching requires a bachelor's degree. And so that part of that baseline pay, like you said, should include the loans that it took to get that degree. I never thought about it like that. And that's a really powerful shift in a lot of employers as they think about how much to pay an employer.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we have allowed these. The problem has been a lot of the stuff that has been going on. It hasn't been immediate. It's years and decades of dedication to undermining the value of the workforce as a whole. It isn't just like, I teach electromechanical systems, which is like industrial repair, and you see the stagnation of a maintenance worker who used to be, that was the job you wanted to get to in an industrial setting. You wanted to move into maintenance because it was a much easier job on your body, and it paid a lot more because of the education required. Well, when you have automation replacing the people on the floor, and you're hiring more maintenance technicians, you slow down the wage increase. The differences in wages that the maintenance would get, you start stifling and slow that down, and then eventually the maintenance technician is the standard, and what happens is people stop going to school for that maintenance job because it's not worth the stress and everything else that goes along with it. And now there's a maintenance shortage. Like, everything leads to, like, but yeah, it's a circle, but it all leads to the same. Well, I got into an argument with a international employer, and they were like, "We can't keep people for 3 months." I'm like, "What? Why is that?" And like, after 3 months, they move on to another company because we start them off on the graveyard shift, and then 3 months later they leave because they can make more money someplace else on the day shift. And I went, "Well, it seems like you know what the problem is. Then you literally just said what the problem is. It's you're not showing that employee basic respect, and in the grand scheme of thing, all employees are mercenaries. If I can get a better thing someplace else, especially since I don't have any ought or want built up because I haven't been here long, why shouldn't I move some? It would actually be, in a capitalist system, it would be unwise to not move.
Yes.
And that brand loyalty, that company loyalty, when you corrupt the all of the long-term benefits and you stop handing them out, you're justifying people to move to another job.
And it really comes down almost to self-care and self-preservation in terms of what's
Mm-hmm.
best for you, which kind of moves into this like, kind of this part about your book. You talk about taking care of yourself. What's a mindset shift that could help teachers have more self-care and stop normalizing bad treatment in their school?
Being willing to draw some type of line in the sand. I've been pondering on something like this for a while now because I've been getting questions like this from peers at my school. The biggest problem that I see in teachers addressing some of the toxic elements is we are bad advocates for ourselves. However, if you spin it and you say you're not advocating for yourself, you're advocating for not your students, you're advocating for your graduates. And getting them used to that, like changing that mentality of that's where I was talking to that employer. That was the change in my mentality was I'm not advocating for my students. I'm advocating for my graduates. Right? I tell my students all the time, I don't care. I have a lot of family that works in medical field. I'm like, I don't care what it is. If you think that you're in a situation that is dangerous, you say I'm done. My goal in life, since most of you are younger than me, my goal in life is that you all outlive me.
Yeah.
If you are in an unsafe work environment, and I've had students later on that come up and said, I quit my job because they were doing a bunch of unsafe stuff. And I went, good. I will be the first person to clap you on the back and say that's a smart move. When we switch it, instead of advocating, we're not really advocating for ourselves, we're advocating for better environments for our graduates. That's really something that we can start getting around. I am advocating for better wages for my graduates, better working conditions for my graduates. It makes it so that the fight is the longer term fight, and it gets us used to being that confrontational. Another area is that it started was when it comes to being advocates for our graduates, we don't really recognize, especially when you're talking at the college and university level, we may not like it, but we are the advocates for industry. I am an advocate for my industry. When I started asking questions about like what is the acceptable wages in the area and stuff like that, I realized a lot of our discussion was one direction. Industry was telling us what the wages were. Industry was telling us what the environment was. But the discussion wasn't two-way where I was not really telling them what were the expectations of my students. So I left my graduates, when I was first starting, I left my graduates to be their own advocates. They were depending on the industry. And I was like, no, I need to be the flag bearer for my graduates as well.
Yeah,
I need to be an ally for them to depend on.
yes, having that long view perspective for the future is such a different shift for a lot of teachers, and it allows them to, like you said, to advocate, have that confidence to advocate for themselves, their students, and the future of the students. So what a
But
powerful place to be.
it's like I said, that advocating for ourselves. I really wasn't a good advocate for myself until I started advocating for my graduates. Then I was like, oh, now I really understand. I should be doing more of this.
Yes. And they're very lucky to have you advocating for them. I think all of us as teachers, though, can take that up as well to think about that piece of the future for our students, a big view.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. So, along with advocating for our students, what is something a teacher could do right now if they're feeling a little discouraged? Maybe they're not in the best work environment. Is there something that they could do this week to feel more empowered and in control with their work life?
I will tell you something that I do to like take control of my work life. That a lot of like give yourself permission to take sick leave. I have literally like this was one of my favorite stories. It was before I was teaching, but I have literally driven to work, looked at the building, and called in sick. Nope, I'm here. I'm in the parking lot. And I just called up like, nope, not coming in. Hung up, and it was an hour drive to work and an hour drive home at like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, no, I'm not coming in. Give yourself permission to take a mental break. Like, that's what sick days are for. Like, in all actuality, yeah, physical and blah, blah, blah. And sometimes we need to recognize that if we are beat up mentally, we're going to be beat up physically. It's okay to take an extra day of rest every now and then. It's okay to say, you know what? Yesterday was horrible. And expect me to put a smiley face on today? And no, I'm not doing it. It's not that I'm not. I can't do it today. A lot of people, it used to be a mentality if you can work, you work. But that should sometimes you need to even if you feel like going to work, sometimes you need to be like, you know what? It's just a day I don't want to do it, and give yourself permission to burn a sick day. A lot you have them. We have so many rules around actually using them. Sometimes it's just okay. What are the rules? All right, I'm burning one. It's just, and my suggestion is burn one in the middle of the week. Getting stuff done in the middle of the week is great.
Yeah.
But sometimes you just need to give yourself permission to recharge off schedule. You're outside of the weekend and don't do any, okay, I'm burning a sick day so I can get caught up on. No, no, no. Set that stuff aside. Watch some TV. Like, I build models. Spend some time just relaxing, recharging your batteries, do whatever you need to do, and then approach the day. The next on the next day. Their students will be fine. Everything will be fine. I just burn a sick day. You'll be there's no real reward in collecting too much sick day. It's part of your package when you work as a like in any employment. Don't abuse it, but you know, you have permission. I give you permission to burn a
Yes.
sick day.
Yes, and I actually just did a video on this on my channel and talked about using your sick days and also using your personal days because some of them don't roll over the next year. So you want to use the days for sure that
Mm-hmm.
don't roll over, and also your sick days as well to make sure that you're getting the rest that you need mentally as well as physically. So yes, that's a great tip. Is there anything else that you want to share about kind of the workplace ethics that haven't been talked about yet?
We've covered a lot of stuff. I really the main thing is like we need to see it as a relationship, but it is as a professional relationship. We need to like stop letting management give themselves titles. We need to understand like, hey, you know what? This opportunity here, it would be really great, but I don't want to take advantage of it because I really like where I'm at. That commitment discussion, it does work in abusive relationships, but it's also like works when it's not abusive. It's okay to stay where you're at if you're looking at this like I'm the founding instructor for my program, and I've been offered multiple jobs to go get out of teaching, and I'm just like I'm really proud of where I'm at. I'm actually treated well, you know. I make decent money. I don't I like this. So when you can get to that point in your relationship where you see that your commitments are your choice and not that you choose to continue versus I am locked in place. Like that's the goal that we all should have professionally is when we wake up we choose to continue with our path. So, and
Yeah.
that's where Maslow really highlighted. Like, it's all about freedom, like personal freedom. When you get to the higher needs, that's personal freedom.
Yeah, making sure that you feel aligned and committed to what you're doing, even if there's other offers, kind of knowing this is what I want to do. At least for now, this feels really, really good with who I am. So, yeah. Well, we're going to finish off with some quick questions just for the audience to get to know you. They're kind of fun questions. So, the first question is favorite teacher lunch?
I don't really do big lunches. My labs usually go bleed over lunch. I do make weird stuff with ramen though. That's the one thing I really do for my teacher lunches. I have ramen or salad every day. A friend of mine turned me to getting like cowboy caviar, or if you want like you can throw some fruit in there with your ramen and you don't put the seasoning packet in, and now you have a sweet ramen instead. It's yeah, I really do a lot of stuff with ramen.
It's non-perishable, so you just get a bunch of it, stick it in your classroom,
Yep.
and you always have it. I
Yep.
love it. Worst teacher lunch?
I am not a fan of anything with cake. I'm not a sweets person.
Hmm.
So unless it's a good cookie, like I or like gravy, I I'm not a fan of gravy in general. But we tend to have. I've been to a bunch of teacher like lunches for meetings and stuff, and like, and then here's this gravy, and it's like, oh, I'm not gonna put that near anything.
Leave.
Yep. Oh, and the one thing I really hate if for like meetings and stuff is if they have anything to do with fish. It just makes the room smell like fish forever.
Right, or
So,
the microwave. It's like, don't put fish on the
yep,
microwave. That should be a rule.
yep.
Okay, your best behavior management tip as a teacher.
For behavior management, most of my all of my students are adults.
Mm.
I don't have it near me. I have a box of cheesy stickers that I bought on the TikTok shop and through a bunch of other different places. And they're just adult orientated stickers. And if they do a good job, grab a sticker. And for some reason, this like above anything else I've ever tried, like they'll do something and then like they'll spend 5 minutes digging through this little box of like dumb stickers and it's the greatest reward they could have had. And then the next day they come in and the stickers on their notebook or whatever, and it's been great. Like that has turned out just it was an off the cuff thing that I tried once and it's turned into a huge success.
I love it. Yeah, I find that too in my classroom as well. Even if I just give them a check mark or if I give them a stamp, they're just like, it's just the next level of they're excited. So, yeah, I love that. Last lesson that you taught.
I taught the last class that I taught was PLC programming, which is programmable logic computers. That's one of the industrial programming languages. You program with pictures. You actually don't use a script. So it's designed in order for electricians to really use.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's a fun. My favorite part of the entire program is that section there.
Oh, wow. That's fun then. A lot of passion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Last quick question here is best advice from a teacher mentor when you were first starting out.
That take a sick day.
Yeah.
That was advice I got from it was the president or the chapter president for the union, and he was actually in the office that I was temporarily in, and his first thing was make sure you burn your sick day whenever you can, like, and it was he's like you might feel this or that, but his whole thing was burn your sick day. It's pennies on the dollar when you actually do the math. You think you're getting something if you hold on to it. He's like, no, burn it. Though he was a lot more aggressive when we were talking about it.
Well, that's a good advice to kind of leave off on. And I want to say thank you so much for coming on and sharing so much. This conversation has been just so valuable with information for teachers. And I'm sure they're going to want to connect with you. So, where can the audience reach you if they want to know more about you or your book?
You can connect with me through my website, ftsleaders.com. I also have a TikTok, FTS Leaders or Middle Age Nerd, and there's a Facebook group. But all of the connections are done can be reached through the website.
And I will link that website right underneath this video in all the different platforms so that you guys can click on it if you want to find that information quickly. So, yes. Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you giving all this knowledge, and it'll be fun to hear from teachers to see how they are able to use it in their workplace.
Oh yeah, I really look forward to the discussions.